Okay, we're going to get started here. Okay, I think we should rename this red conference. We should name this year's conference the John McGraw Conference, because this is the third research presentation at this conference that is devoted to John McGraw and in part to John McGraw. Hi, can I help you? Are you with us?
In a way, I got here late today, never got my paperwork.
Oh, okay. We're our group?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, come on. Sorry. I didn't recognize you. Save that chair on the end for me.
Is that what it says?
Okay, no, that one, I'm gonna sit it. Okay, so for anyone that was here last, there's a whole discussion that was done by two gentlemen from Baltimore, SABR members, very fine fellows, who did a presentation about, is it all about Ned Hanlon, or is it about John McGraw and Huey Jennings and company? And it was a very interesting presentation. And in a way, Kerry, your presentation fits right in, because St. Bonaventure's, their time at St. Bonaventure figures very heavily in what they were doing up there. So I'd like to introduce Kerry Gleason.
Thank you very much, Peter. And okay, you guys ready to have some fun? Because we're going to talk about two of the most colorful characters in baseball in the 1890s and first part of the century. So my name is Kerry Gleason, and my presentation is titled The McGraw-Jennings Baseball Incubator at St. Bonaventure. My focus is on how two guys that were barely 20 years old changed the game of baseball as coaches of a small college team in the Enchanted Mountains of New York State. And I was coerced into putting a slide up about myself, and I'll briefly say I worked in public relations for 35 years, and then I moved to Colorado, and I have written 5 books and 4 screenplays. And my most recent book is titled The Giant and the Tiger, and it's about the amazing friendship between John McGraw and Huey Jennings. So who are McGraw and Jennings? I guess that there's 3 presentations about John McGraw. Just briefly, he was born April 7th in 1873 in Truxton, New York, which is about 15 miles south of Syracuse, and it's not too far from right here in Cooperstown. He was, as a boy, he was a candy butcher, which meant he sold candy and cigarettes on the train that passed through Truxton, and he did so to support his family, but he always found time almost every day to play baseball. Hugh Ambrose Jennings, he was born April 2nd in 1869 in Pittston, Pennsylvania, which is not far from Scranton. And Huey's father worked in the coal mines. His brothers worked in the coal mines, and Huey worked in the coal mines. He was a breaker boy, which meant that he broke apart the anthracite coal to remove any impurities from it. And he hated it. He didn't like it as much as baseball. But he's, at the end of the day, he would organize baseball games for all the boys that worked in the mines. So here we see the Spalding Guide. John McGraw was recognized in his town as the boy who had a baseball in one back pocket and the A.G. Spalding Guide in the other. He memorized the rules, and every year he would buy another Spalding Guide to keep up with any changes in the rules. At 15, he was good enough to play for the Truxton Grays. And that was a local team that played against other teams in central New York. And his coach there was a guy named Bert Kenny. After the one season that John McGraw played there, Kenny moved to Olean, where he became the owner-manager of the Olean Oilers. And that was a new team that eventually the league became known as the New York Penn League. So here's a picture of John McGraw in Olean. He was 16 years old. He jumped a train to Olean, thinking that his former coach would bring him on as a pitcher. Bert Kenny already had his pitching staff in place, but he knew that McGraw made some sacrifices to get there. So he said, well, why don't you try out for third base? And McGraw had moved there. He had no place to live, no money. So, but he was eager for the chance. His very first day of practice, it was witnessed by a Franciscan priest from the area college. It was known as St. Bonaventure College at that time. And Father James Dolan was that Franciscan priest. And he offered McGraw a room and 3 square meals a day, staying at a dormitory at the college. And the two of them became very good friends. So McGraw's debut with the Olean 9 was auspicious. He rode the pine for 5 games before even getting into a game. Then when he finally got a chance to start, there were 10 balls hit to him. He made 8 errors. So wasn't a good way to start, and his tenure with the Olean team lasted only about 5 more games. So John, he was ready to hit the road, and Father James approached him and he said, you know, I just want to leave you with one piece of advice, and that's don't ignore your education. So we'll fast forward here, and 2 years later, John made it to the Baltimore Orioles in August of 1891. And Baltimore was then with the American Association, which was a major league. John hit .270 in limited capacity that year. But he earned the right to come back the following year. And in 1892, Baltimore was added to the 12-team National League. And John McGraw played a little more regularly, and he hit .269. Again, fairly respectable. After the season was over, he was trying to figure out what to do, and he had a couple of different choices. He didn't want to go back to Truxton. He had had a falling out with his father. He didn't want to stay in Baltimore because it was too expensive for him. And so he decided that maybe he'd go to St. Bonaventure and get an education. So you might ask, where is St. Bonaventure? Some people who went to Canisius know. But
dumpster, New York. I'm sorry, my bad.
And we also have another Bonaventure grad in the crowd too, so that's good. St. Bonaventure is located about 90 miles south of Buffalo, almost right on the Pennsylvania border, and it's very snowy and very cold there. So anyhow, John he called Father James and he said, listen, he said.
Good afternoon, Hall of Fame guests. We hope you're enjoying your day here at the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. This is just a reminder that the final showing of our 17-minute film, Generations of the Game, will be taking place in about 10 minutes at 3:30. Once again, final showing of our 17-minute film, Generations of the Game, will be taking place in about 10 minutes at 3:30, and that'll be on the second floor in our grandstand theater. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day here in Cooperstown.
By the way, Canisius, St. Bonnet, and Niagara are called Little Three, so that's why
We have a little.
it's a rivalry
rivalry
in that area.
It goes back a lot of years. Anyway, don't anybody think about leaving for the second floor. Anyway, so John, he got in touch with Father James. He said, "Listen, Padre," he said, "I don't have money for classes, but how about I exchange my knowledge and coach your baseball team during the winter months in exchange for tuition and room." And so it turned out to be a good deal. Father James, he was an avid baseball fan. He had started a very ambitious intramural program and was just starting a team that was going to play other schools and local teams. So John's timing was perfect in his. And James said, "Hey, come on up to St. Bonaventure." John was excited, and here's a receipt. He bought baseball glove for the entire team, and this is a receipt from I purchased from a New York outfit for a bunch of baseball gloves. What a deal! Now McGraw was still just 19 years old, and a lot of the players at St. Bonaventure were older than he was. But he still commanded a great deal of respect because he had more than a year's experience playing Major League Baseball. And in addition to being an asset to the baseball program, he was also a very good student. Now, the following year, 1893, Huey Jennings, here on the left, he joined the Baltimore Orioles in August, and he came over from Louisville. And then there's a picture that's John with Wilbert Robinson, who was the catcher for the Orioles. And so they became birds of a feather in a way, even though the two of them had polar opposite personalities. Later in his career, McGraw was described that he ate gunpowder for breakfast and washed it down with warm blood. And Huey Jennings, on the other hand, he was called the saint of baseball. But the two got along great. They were both Orioles. They were both single young men. They were both Irish and both Catholic, and they both had a burning desire to win. And now in 1892, Ned Hamlin came on board as manager of the Orioles, and they were a losing outfit. They had been in last place. His first season as manager, they elevated to 8th in a 12-team league. He brought in some players that fit the design that he had for a winning team, which was speed and more speed. Anyway, so Wee Willie Keeler joined the team, as well as Joe Kelly, and Jennings and McGraw, and the four of them, even though they were diminutive in size, they became known as the Big Four. At the end of the 1893 season, and that 8th place finish, McGraw convinced Huey Jennings to join him at St. Bonaventure. They cleared it with Father James, and so both of them came up to St. Bonaventure. They roomed together in a dormitory. They took classes and during the day, and then in the afternoons and evenings, they had the team practice their baseball. Being the winter with the snow and the cold, they got permission to use Alumni Hall. I'm sorry. This is a picture of the Big Four with Thomas Murphy, who was the groundskeeper for the Orioles, and he ended up playing a big part in the Orioles' later success. Here you see a picture of Alumni Hall, and that is the 1894 St. Bonaventure baseball team. Now, St. Bonaventure was a fairly new unit, and it basically consisted of 2 buildings and a church. So they got permission to practice in the basement of Alumni Hall. Previously, it had been used for storage. So they had the team clear out the basement. They hung heavy drapes over the windows. They built a batting cage out of chicken wire, and then they hung kerosene lamps for lighting. And McGraw and Jennings, they had an open door policy for their players. They used to stay up late talking about baseball into the late hours of the evening, and they invited their players to come and join them and do the same. They told their players that they were going to learn scientific baseball. So, let's see, you see Alumni Hall there, and they were playing in the basement, so they were fairly limited. The pitchers and catchers were able to do their thing, but as far as hitting went, they were limited to half swings and bunts. So they were fairly limited in what they could do, but McGraw and Jennings improvised the best they could. You've got the players here, and you see the names, Ryan, O'Malley, Murtaugh, Crosby, McNamara. See any similarities, anything go on there? They were all Irish, and that was something that worked well. McGraw and Jennings felt very much at home with that. So I mentioned the names of the players because they became an instrumental part in changing the game of baseball. As my beloved journalism professor Russell Jandoli once told me, he said, for every name on the marquee, there are 1,000 that put it there. Here's the same photo without the names, where you can see Huey Jennings and John McGraw, and then Father James Dolan in the center. In one of their late night skull sessions, McGraw and Jennings, they were thinking about ways to advance runners on the base paths. And at the time, in the National League, it was pretty much station to station ball. Players were advancing one base at a time. And they wanted to see if there was a way to move runners across faster. And they came up with what they called the hit and run. They made sketches and scribblings, and they took them down to the basement of Alumni Hall and put them into practice. So they put their plan to the test. They had Murtaugh at first base and O'Malley at second. Conlon was the right fielder. Norton was a runner at first base, and McNamara was the hitter who was trying to move him over. And so Norton took off for second base when the pitcher was ready to deliver the ball, and O'Malley went to cover the bag, and it left a big hole on the right side of the infield, and McNamara had no trouble in bashing the ball through the hole in the infield. They tried that over and over again with different players, and it seemed to be working. McGraw had an idea. He asked if any of the guys had a stopwatch. One of the guys raised his hand. McGraw sent him to his room and came back with a stopwatch, and he started timing how long it took for a runner to run from first base to third base, how long it took for the outfielder to field the ball and throw it into the third base. A math major on the team, he took that information, he charted it, and they put together a mathematical equation, and they calculated the risk-reward formula, and the hit and run could be a success. And after all, this was scientific baseball. So the next spin-off of that would be, because again, they were limited in the basement, the bunt and run. And they practiced that, and that worked almost as well. They worked on other plays also. The squeeze bunt, the drag bunt, the double steal. And then, again, because of the limitations, another play just kind of came to them, and it became known as the Baltimore Chop. So now, some of these plays had appeared in baseball before, but McGraw and Jennings incorporated into a whole strategic system for using the speed to throw their opponents off guard and create chaos. And if you look at the hit and run then versus now, back then, the main objective was to create chaos. It forced infielders to move, which made bad infielders worse. And not only that, but at that time, they had a lot of what we'll call hyper contact hitters, whereas in today's game, we have more power hitters and more athletic infielders. And so the hit and run is used mostly to avoid a double play. So here's an article that was written after, this was probably a couple of decades after their tenure at St. Bonaventure, but quote from this article, it says, "The two experimented with newly designed plays and strategies which transformed gameplay not only at the college level, but also in the professional ranks. In terms of baseball management, the two were a coalesce of orderliness, strategic inventiveness, and analytical skill. Not only that, but they were also known as tough, firm authoritarians." Now, the plays that they designed, they would have gone nowhere. They would have gone to the dustbin of history, if not for Ned Hamlin. When it was time for McGraw and Jennings to go down to spring training, they brought their plays to Hanlon and asked if they could try them. And Hanlon, he was a very aggressive manager, and he said, let's give it a shot, see if it works. And with the crew that he had assembled, it did. And as they practiced it, they developed a whole scheme around it. So they went into the 1894, and they were armed with this new offensive arsenal. And the Baltimore Orioles catapulted from 8th place to 1st place. They won the pennant. And here we go. Here is the 1894 team, and 6 of the 8 position players on that team are right here in Cooperstown at the Hall of Fame. So the results of scientific baseball, I'm going to skip over that one for now. And I'm not going to expect you to read all the statistics, but I'll highlight some of the best parts. McGraw hit .340 with 78 stolen bases. Jennings raised his average from a paltry 182 to 335, and he also added some power. And then we look at the Baltimore Orioles as a team. They increased their team average from 275 to 343. They scored 351 more runs. Their OPS soared from 724 to 901. And they had 324 stolen bases compared with just 233 the year before. Other teams in the league, notably the New York Giants, who finished second, they complained to the league that the Orioles were cheating. But remember the teenage kid with the Spalding guide in his back pocket? John McGraw knew the rules probably as well as anybody else walking the face of the earth. And so he knew that the scientific baseball that he was teaching was well within the rules. And despite winning the pennant, okay, so they had the Temple Cup back then, which pitted the pennant winner against the second place team. And so the Baltimore Orioles, they played against the New York Giants in the Temple Cup series, best of 7 series, and they got swept. The Giants won 4-0. And that was a bitter disappointment. Then, let's see. Oh, and these statistics, they're going to be in the handout if you want to take a look at them. Now, the next year, the Orioles, they also won the pennant again, and they played against the Cleveland Spiders in the Temple Cup. And this article in the blue, you'll see some highlights of this article. But when McGraw and Jennings went back to Bonaventure to coach, they were grousing about their loss 2 years in a row in the Temple Cup. And Jennings said, you know what killed us? It was throws from the outfield to the infield. They're either off target or the players threw to the wrong base, and Spiders were getting extra bases. So he said, well, let's use our time here to develop a defensive strategy. And so the cutoff throw was born. And they developed a system where the outfielders would relay the throw to an infielder who would then decide which base to throw to. And because it's a shorter throw, it would be more accurate. And the cutoff throw is used almost every inning of every game today. Now, these are the Temple Cup results for the following years. You'll see that the Orioles lost miserably the first 2 years, but then in 1896 they won the pennant again, and they beat the Cleveland Spiders. In 1897, they won 90 games in a 130-game season. But they finished 2 games behind Boston. They did beat them in the Temple Cup series. So these are the 6 plays that are attributed to McGraw and Jennings while they were at St. Bonaventure. The hit and run, the bunt and run, the double steal, the drag bunt, the squeeze bunt, and the cutoff throw. And I will say that McGraw was innovative in other ways too. He invented, with Wilbert Robinson, he invented duck pin bowling. And later in his career, there are some other baseball things that he brought into play that are mimicked and still used today as well. So these are the plaques for McGraw and Jennings here in Cooperstown. So with fewer than 3,000 students, St. Bonaventure is one of only 2 schools that has 2 or more Hall of Famers. Can anybody name the other college?
Arizona State.
ASU. Jackson, Reggie Jackson.
You went to U of A. No, he went there. So it's on ASU.
I haven't heard ASU.
That's not the whole thing.
Columbia University, they've got 5. And John Montgomery Ward, Eddie Collins, Lou Gehrig, Sandy Koufax, basically was there for a cup of coffee, but still counts. And then sports writer Leonard Cobbett. So this is a stamp that was issued in 1939. It celebrates 100 years of baseball in America. And with every stamp that's issued, there's something called a first issue cover. And it's basically a postmark stamp. And I brought some samples of some recent ones that you can see what they are. If you can pass those around, you can look at. I'm almost done. Anyway, here is the first issue cover for this stamp, and it paid tribute to St. Bonaventure University for contributions to baseball And it featured pictures of McGraw and Jennings and their 1894 baseball team. And gave a little description of St. Bonaventure College, which eventually became a university.
Get back there.
Um, I'm sorry?
Talking about the stamps.
So, since 1927, the playing fields at St. Bonaventure have been known as McGraw-Jennings Field. And here you see a young Kerry Gleason rounding second during an intramural game in 1980. 2027 will mark the 100th anniversary of McGraw-Jennings Field. And I'm working with the athletic department and the administration at St. Bonaventure to create some sort of a campus celebration of that that will forever connect the names of McGraw and Jennings with Bonnie's baseball. And certainly they will forever be linked to the national game. And then this is St. Bonaventure today. And in closing, I would just like to thank a few people. Joe Adana, who's president of the Rocky Mountain SABR chapter, he helped put together the slides. The Rocky Mountain SABR chapter and has given enthusiastic encouragement and support. Cassidy Lent here at the Hall of Fame. And then to the organizers of the Fred Conference. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you very much. And
Let me ask you if you hold any questions for Kerry till our break. We're going on break right now. We're going to go back to the, the Giamatti Cellar room, and we have like a
Thank you.
break here.
thank you very much, everyone.
It's awesome. Here, it sounds.
Kerry.
I'll build it.